But it does come with access to the animal diet formulator, and that's what I'm going to use to balance Jericho's diet. I have these bags that are for my new tool and my diet sheet. So for this one, I'm going to put the quail and the duck in there, see if maybe that'll soak up some of the moisture. Oh, that seems to work a little. Yeah, it looks like it's getting a lot of the moisture. So this is what it looks like 4 days after I vacuum sealed it. So it's been in the freezer for 4 days. There's still some ice, but I mean, it's still better than without using it. These are the bones, so the chicken wings and chicken necks. I think that that has less crystals, probably because it's more compact. And this is it 2 weeks later. Hey, Jericho. So this is 1 week's worth of food, and it's been in the freezer for 2 weeks. This is the one where I put the quail on top. So there's a few bits of ice, but I think that it held up pretty well. It looks like it held the vacuum seal pretty well. It's pretty tight. So we'll see what it looks like after I thaw it. So here it is in the refrigerator, thawed. I put this in here about a day and a half ago. No leaks, so that's good. That means there's no holes. And it looks like everything's still sealed. So I'm gonna put it on the counter and also get out Jericho's dinner dish because he's gonna eat one of the ducks that's in here, the little baby duck. So it looks pretty good. I think I really like this. I have some tips for the next time that I have to portion it. Of course, Jericho's always on top of the counter. So I'm gonna use it again in like 2 weeks and get some good tips. So I'm going to put this in my stand-up bag to keep everything together because I don't want any of the juices to run out. And I'm just gonna snip the top off of it and, like I said, grab this baby duck for Jericho to eat for dinner. So this is some leftover meats from the last time I portioned on the last day. So I fill up the day with this little baby duckling right here. It's all wet because of the moisture that's in the bag. So I'm just going to cover this for now and zip up this bag and return it to the refrigerator, Jericho, and return it to the refrigerator so that I can feed Jericho because I need to feed him on this mat. So let's get Jericho ready for his food. He's got his duck and some pieces of, looks like gizzard and some other meat. So I'm just gonna lay this down on the mat. I wonder if he's gonna go for it. Sometimes he goes for it right away, sometimes he doesn't. But maybe because he smells the juices, maybe. I don't know. I think I'm just gonna have to dump this on the mat. It's really hard to do it with one hand while I hold the camera. So I just pour out all the juices. I do add some water, and I've been putting it in a warm water bath just so that it isn't straight cold from the refrigerator. So let's see if Jericho's what he's gonna go for first. Probably the duck. Yeah, he's gonna go for the duck first. So he, of course, drags his food all over the floor, but that's all right. So anyway, the benefits of feeding the whole prey duck is because it's natural, you know, cats outside would eat whole prey. So my superhero for whole prey is baby ducks and the adult quail, but we'll talk about that in a second. I would love to feed baby chicks only, like even if it's like a large variety, obviously is better. But if I could feed just the baby chicks, that would be the best because I could just feed them whole because they're around 2 to 3 ounces. But baby chicks aren't that old. Most of the time they're just a day old. So their bones aren't fully calcified yet. So unfortunately, he wouldn't get enough calcium if it was just the babies that he was eating. He needs the adults and the adult wings, and you know, I'll talk about all of those other superheroes after I clean up this mess. So I got this little furniture piece that I'm not using, and I'm gonna see if he'll stay off my counter because as you can see, I don't have a lot of room. So I wanna see if this little hack helps. So I'm gonna get my garbage bag ready first for the quail. I like to chop off the feathers before I chop up the bird, and I actually do this a little differently. So I'm just gonna get my bag ready and then I'll explain everything. And again, all of these meal prep supplies, they're always in the description below. Of course, Jericho's up on the counter, so let me see if I can just put him onto the top of this cabinet here where the blanket is. Let's see if he'll actually lay down and be a good boy. Let's see, he's checking it out, so I don't know, maybe? All right, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Oh, it looks like he might just lay down and stay there. All right. So here's the adult quail, and I just work over the garbage bag, but This is what it looks like. It's super moist because of all of the juices from the bag, because when I use the vacuum sealer, it kind of soaked everything up. So first, usually what I'll do is I'll snip the wings. I just snip off some of the extra feathers because sometimes Jericho is like, this is too many feathers. So I just snip off some of the feathers. But really, this is a great superhero because it's small enough so that Jericho can eat all of the bones. Unlike an entire chicken, cats probably wouldn't hunt down a chicken, but an adult quail, this is probably around 5 or 6 ounces. So this is a little more than he eats for the whole day. But what I do now, instead of cutting it into a bunch of separate pieces, is I just cut it into 2 pieces. So he's getting some of the dental benefits of gnawing through the entire prey and instead of like smaller pieces. But I really like to feed this, even though I do have to do some maintenance on it. But, because you get the brains, the eyes, all of the glands. And I'm going to cut it over this jar because the last time I did this, some blood did come out. So I'm just going to cut it over the jar, and I just split it in 2. So I'll do 2 jars. He's going to eat both of these pieces tomorrow. And I'll just do it over the jar so that all the blood goes in there and then none of it gets wasted. And I usually start with the kitchen shears to get through the bones, and then I'll use these other smaller ones just to get through some of the skin. These are just craft scissors. But you can see all those guts in there, and that's everything, literally the entire prey. So the skin, the connective tissue, the tendons, the ligaments, this is all stuff that's usually missing from prey model raw or ground diets. So really, this is a great superhero food to have to feed your cat whole prey, because then he gets everything. So I'm gonna go through my bag and show you each ingredient and explain why I'm using it. So this is boneless turkey thigh. There's a little bit of fat on there, but mainly it's just the muscular meat. So this is the big base of the diet, and I'm going to cut it up into bite-sized pieces so that Jericho has something to chew. But this is really great for all of the amino acids, and especially taurine. The harder the muscle works, the more taurine there's going to be, and we all know how important taurine is. There are some vitamins. There's also phosphorus. Meat is typically higher in phosphorus compared to calcium. There is some potassium and chloride, and there's some small amounts of other minerals. So this is a great base to the diet because, we need the taurine, but all of those extra nutrients are also important. Okay, what's next in my grab bag? We have some turkey heart. So this is a muscular organ, and the difference here is that it does not secrete. It is a hardworking muscle. So this is also great for amino acids. Jericho just jumped into the kitchen. This is also great for amino acids like taurine. It's also great for vitamin A and choline. There is more phosphorus than calcium, but there is a little bit. And I also cut these into chunks so that Jericho can chew on them. Next, we got some chicken wings. And this is mainly for the calcium, major source here because calcium is very high in bones. But there's also protein and fat because of all of this skin. So you always want to feed with the meat on the bones. Skin is really great though for the fat. There's phosphorus, of course, because there's meat. There's potassium and other minerals. There's also vitamins A and E and some B vitamins and choline. But aside from nutrition, chewing on these whole raw meaty bones is also great for working the face muscles, great for dental health, great for mental stimulation, and this is really the best way to keep your cat's teeth clean, is just chewing on raw meaty bones, because that's what nature intended. My other calcium source in raw meaty bones are the neck, and there's a lot more fat on these guys. I like to cut them up so that it's easier for Jericho to chew, so he'll have a chunk of fat and then a chunk of raw meaty bones. So there's also calcium, phosphorus, same type of minerals and vitamins as the wings. I mainly focus on more of a wing than the neck, but I do still like to include the necks for variety. These necks have a lot of skin on them, so the fat is super important because the turkey that I use is basically fat-free, and so is the other meats that I use. So this fat really comes in handy because it increases the caloric density and also the palatability of the food. So I'm gonna put the bones into this separate jar. I forgot to do that before. So I put the bones in a separate jar, that way I can divvy out the bones, at least one meaty bone per day. and I'm just going to return the fat to the bag. Next up, my superhero, turkey gizzards. This is a hardworking muscular meat as well. It's tough and fibrous, great to chew through, so I'm going to cut them up into bite-sized pieces. They're also high in taurine because it's a muscular, hardworking muscular organ. Also has vitamin A, C, D, and E, and B vitamins. There's lots of chloride, and it's also good for potassium as well. So these gizzards are a muscular organ that birds use to break down their food. They actually swallow rocks, and then it mixes in the gizzards to break it down. Very interesting. This is beef spleen. This is my superhero for iron, and it also has a lot of potassium. Actually, there's more potassium than iron, but this little bit fulfills Jericho's iron requirements. And this is a secreting organ. So I'm going to cut this up into very, very small pieces because I want to make sure that he's only getting a tiny bit each day rather than a big chunk because, you know, it's very rich in nutrients. And so you want to make sure that it's just more equally spread out throughout the week. That way it's not so many nutrients all at once. These nutrients are great, but they're very dense, so we want to make sure that it's spread out evenly among the week. Our next secreting organ is turkey liver. This is a big superhero for taurine. It's the highest amount of taurine compared to all of the ingredients that we're using. So this is also highest in vitamin A. So there's a massive amount of vitamin A in liver. So again, this I'm also going to chop up into very, very tiny pieces because you want it to be even and equal throughout the week. This is another secreting organ. Typically, this is a mandatory secreting organ, and it's typically used in all of the base diets. And we don't want to overdo it because we don't want hypervitaminosis, especially with vitamin A. That's a fat-soluble vitamin, and that's more likely to cause toxicity. It's also good for B vitamins, phosphorus, potassium, and sodium. Kind of looks like pudding. And beef spleen looks a little similar, but you could see this one's a bit more on the darker side and a little bit more liquidy loose. So I also have a bit of ground beef in here. It's a little mushy, so it's hard to find, but this ground beef is 80-20. It's low in taurine, but provides B vitamins, iron, potassium, chloride, and zinc. There's also some salmon in there. That's my superhero for vitamin D, but it's pretty mushy and hard to find it. But it's also great for chloride and choline. There's some green beef tripe also that's ground, and that has a great calcium to phosphorus ratio. Also provides magnesium, so it's a superhero for magnesium. Also provides sodium, zinc, vitamin E, and choline. But I mainly use the beef tripe, for those nutrients, of course, but really it's also a superhero for probiotics and enzymes, because this is the best way basically to mimic the cat eating the stomach contents of prey. So the tripe includes some of that pre-digested plant material that the cow or lamb, whatever type of tripe you have, I use cow tripe. So it contains those prebiotics and enzymes that the cow has in his gut. So this is what my grab bag looks like. I just kind of mix everything together when I portion out the food. And as I said, I do the bones separately. And I'm going to turn on my digital scale and start portioning out Jericho's meals. And I'm going to use one dish for each day instead of individual jars. And then the night before I feed him, I split it into 2 jars so I can do the warm water bath. So I start with the bone, that way he gets one each day so that he's chewing on that each day, and then I just plop the rest on there until I fulfill his daily requirements. And if it goes a little over, that's all right, but I try to stay as close as possible to that just so that I have the exact amount that I need for the week. So I might have to put a little back into the bag, I might have to find a smaller piece, I might have to switch out some things, but I try to keep it as even as possible. So I'm just gonna put it into this one dish because that's just easier. And these are actually freezer friendly. The jars that I was using are not freezer friendly. And then I have my myoglobin that I saved from when I portioned out his food. So I would like to add that to each day. So Jericho also eats egg yolks, raw egg yolks, and that's my superhero for choline. I mean, egg yolk is basically a superhero for all nutrients, but I mainly use it to fulfill Jericho's choline requirements. My superhero for iodine is kelp. This one is USDA organic, and it actually tells you the species that they use, and it also tells you the amount of iodine that's in it. But you can see that even one serving of this level scoop is like 300% the amount of iodine needed for an adult. So you would only use a very, very tiny amount. And I like that it's ground up into a very fine powder rather than keeping it in the flakes because that's much more easier to dose out. And it also won't get stuck in the teeth. Jericho also eats wheatgrass, aka cat grass. This is my superhero for filling in minerals like selenium, zinc, manganese, potassium. Also has good calcium to phosphorus ratio, lots of vitamin E and B vitamins. So really, I just leave this out for Jericho. I get a fresh plant every 2 weeks from my local farmer's market. I just leave this out for Jericho whenever he needs it. He knows where it is. He'll eat it. Typically, he eats it like 20 to 30 minutes before his meals. So I just let him choose. I don't put it on his food. If he needs it, he can grab it. And if you can't get it at a local farmer's market, maybe you don't have a local grassman, that same brand that I use now also has wheatgrass powder. So I got some of their wheatgrass powder just to have on hand just in case. I mean, my grassman is available year round, but just in case, at least I have it in stock. And this one is also USDA organic. And this one is also broken down into a very fine powder. Look at Jericho being a nice, good boy. I'm really surprised that he stayed up there. My counter is nice and clean because I use the mat. And then I just dump everything in the sink. I really like using this food mat because I don't have to scrub the counter afterwards. I just clean everything with soap and hot water. And then I use this dishcloth that I wash every week. So in the refrigerator, I have Jericho's cut up quail. So that's tomorrow's breakfast and dinner. And then I have the next day's breakfast and dinner in one jar. So I like to split this up. And then in the freezer, I have Jericho's quail I just got. And then I also got some baby goose chicks. So he's never had those before. So I had to raise the shelf in my freezer to fit everything. But now he has some new baby whole prey and all of his other food that I portioned out. So I have 2 days of meals in the refrigerator and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a half a day. So then I'll fulfill the rest of the day with the duck and then the quail makes 7. So this is everything, my freezer and how I sort it out.